This is Entertainment for Review, and today we're going to be returning to the Halloween franchise. We are going to be taking another look at Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. This movie came out in 1995, but today we're going to be taking a look specifically at the producer's cut of this movie. We, in the past, have already reviewed the original movie, the theatrical release, but there is a producer's cut that does change the movie quite a bit, so we're going to take a look. We're not going to re-review the entire movie, but we're just going to focus in on some of the differences between the two cuts. Please note that if you have not seen this movie yet, this review will be containing spoilers. The movie does start out largely the same for both cuts, with Jamie giving birth to her baby in a mysterious facility. Now, the birth scene does seem a little bit longer in the producer's cut, but the first real variation doesn't come until after Jamie's made her escape with the baby. She hides the baby at the bus station, and then she continues to run to draw Michael's attention, and she gets to a barn. Now, in the original movie, this is the end of Jamie. Michael kills her here. In the producer's cut, Jamie gets to the barn, she waits, Michael comes in, he stabs her, we would think kills her, but she actually ends up surviving this scene and gets taken to the hospital later. While Jamie's in the hospital, we do get two backstory scenes to kind of fill in some blanks here. The first goes back to the night in 1989, where Jamie Lloyd was still a child and Michael Myers had been captured, but then gets broken out of jail. We see Jamie walking back through the jail as she did at the end of the movie, but we see some things we didn't see, and one of those is Michael being captured and placed into the back of a van. It seems a little odd to me that it only takes two guys to kind of force Michael into the van. And we see Jamie be captured by what we later know as Dr. Wynn. We also get another scene while Jamie's in her hospital state, and that is a scene depicting her being put on a ritualistic table, and Michael appears here. And what this scene would seem to indicate is that Michael was, by force or not, part of this ritual was that he slept with Jamie, and that he is indeed the father of her baby. Jamie Lloyd ultimately still does not survive the movie, as she is killed after this in the hospital, shot through the head by Dr. Wynn. Now, aside from these differences that I've mentioned already, between the opening and closing, the bulk of the movie is pretty similar between the two versions. There are a few slight variations, nothing that really changes the plot all that much. But for example, in the dining room scene where the Strode family is having an argument early in the movie, and the father strikes out at the daughter, and Danny comes and places a knife to the father's stomach in defense of his mother. Now, in the theatrical version, he just does this. In the producer's cut, he first looks out the window and sees Michael standing outside, and so we're led to believe this influences him to make that decision about what he's going to do. And another slight variation is the death scene of John Strode, and it's just a slight thing. He gets killed largely in the same way. Michael stabs him in the basement and stabs him into the electrical panel. But in the theatrical version, his head explodes, and that doesn't happen in the producer's cut. Just another slight variation. The differences to the two movies really kicks into high gear in the closing scenes that take place at the Smiths Grove Sanitarium. In both versions, Tommy Doyle and Dr. Loomis arrive there to rescue Kara, Danny, and the baby, and they go about it largely the same way. They go in, they go into a hallway, and they split up. Dr. Loomis goes off to confront Dr. Wynn in his office. Now, this is where a big difference kicks in. First, in the original cut, Dr. Wynn's in his office in a suit, and he's just there telling Dr. Loomis that he wants him to join him before a cult member comes in, hits Dr. Loomis on the back of the head, and knocks him out. In the producer's cut, Dr. Wynn's also in his office waiting for Sam, but he's wearing his cult robes in this version, and he's telling him not only that he wants him to join him, but that he wants him to take his place as the person who is responsible for watching over Michael and making sure that his needs are met and that he is okay. And again, a cult member comes in and knocks Dr. Loomis out, and he leaves him there as they go about their business. While this is going on, Tommy Doyle just begins following a cult member through the halls, hoping it's leading him in the right direction, assuming it is, because he's following one of the cult members. Kara, in the original movie, had woken up in a cell in the hospital. In this version, she wakes up tied to a ritualistic table, much like we saw Jamie Lloyd on in her flashback scene earlier in the movie. Now, the other difference here is that we follow Tommy Doyle and he gets to where the cult are, and we find the cult members all standing around Kara and the baby on the table. They're all gathered in this room, and Michael's with them. This is one of the things that bothers me about this new version is that Michael is openly cooperating with the cult and is participating in their ritual. They are attempting to sacrifice Kara and the baby, I assume, in order to carry out their next phase, which I believe is for Danny to become the next Michael Myers and start his journey of killing and bloodshed, just as Michael did as a child of a young age. We also sort of get confirmation that Michael is the father of the baby in this scene when Kara asks him and tries to get him to stop the ritual. However, instead, Tommy Doyle interrupts the ritual. He manages to get Kara freed, and Kara, the baby, Danny, and Tommy make a retreat, and Michael quickly begins his pursuit. They hit a dead end, and Tommy has to deploy his plan to stop Michael, which he had told Dr. Loomis about earlier, and it is with his rune magic. They talked about how the Cult of Thorn is part of this, and the symbol of Thorn is one of the rune symbols. So he puts a circle of stones on the floor. Dr. Loomis arrives and opens the gate to get Kara and the rest out of the way. When Michael approaches, he steps into the circle and begins to choke Tommy, but Tommy uses the word Samhain. Now, I guess this activates his spell. This also goes way back to Halloween 2, where Samhain had been written on the chalkboard in a room that Michael had broken into. Now, it does seem to work as Michael is immobilized, stops choking him, and appears to be trapped in this circle. And they all make a retreat out of the building. Now, from here, we get another similar scene where they try to convince Dr. Loomis to leave with them, but he says he has more business to tend to. While this was going on, Dr. Wynn approached Michael, and Michael regained some of his strength and incapacitated Dr. Wynn and actually switched clothes with him. Dr. Loomis comes back in and thinks he has found Michaels in the circle, now laying on the ground. However, it is revealed to be Dr. Wynn under Michael's mask, and we see Michael making a retreat out of the building in Dr. Wynn's clothing. Now, it's not all over here, as Dr. Wynn says, now it's his responsibility, and the symbol of Thorn disappears off of Dr. Wynn's wrist and appears on Dr. Loomis's. We get Dr. Loomis screaming here, and it's the same scream that we hear at the end of the original version, which we assume is either Dr. Loomis being killed in that version or just screaming in frustration at Michael's having escaped when he finds his sound. And that's the end of this movie. So it seems that the main difference in the two movies is that the producer's cut leans even further into the Cult of Thorn and into the use of magic and their rituals, as we even see magic being used to trap Michael. And I just can't get on board with that. For me, I like what they did better in the theatrical cut. We also had Michael get a little bit of revenge on the cult as he goes crazy and basically kills everybody in the operating theater in the original cut. We do not get that scene in this movie. So most of the cult we can assume gets away, And even Dr. Wynn, we can assume potentially survives. He gets attacked by Michael at the end, but we don't get a confirmed kill on him even here. He's still alive when the movie ends, and he's able to transfer the curse or the symbol of the cult, as it were, over to Dr. Loomis against Dr. Loomis's will. Overall, I can see why a lot of these changes that were in the producer's cut didn't make it into the theatrical cut. Now, from what I read online, a lot of the changes were made because of the death of Donald Pleasance. And with that, they knew that they couldn't move forward into future movies counting on the use of Dr. Loomis. But there were a lot of things I just didn't like in this producer's cut. We didn't need the addition of the incestuous relationship between Michael Myers and his niece, Jamie Lloyd. That's just not necessary, and I think that it was a good decision to cut that aspect out. Michael didn't need to be the father of the baby. That could have been any one of the cult members, I suppose, if they were just planning on sacrificing the baby in the end. They did not need to lean further into the whole Cult of Thorn storyline. In my opinion, the Cult of Thorn kind of ruined this timeline in the Halloween franchise. Part 4 was a brilliant comeback from the departure from Michael in Part 3. Part 4 came back, did it wonderfully. Part 5 was still pretty good, but it started introducing the Cult of Thorn, heading down the wrong path, and this one just went completely off the rails. The Cult of Thorn just ruins it. Michael is a force of nature, a force of evil, working on his own, and trying to put this whole cult behind him to explain him didn't need to be done, and having him work with a cult just doesn't work for his character for what he's done in any of the other movies. So, for those reasons, I don't think this version improves things at all. Originally, I scored this movie at a 4 out of 10, and if this had been the version that was released in theaters, it would have gotten a lower score for me. I would lower it to a 3 out of 10 at least, and that's what I'll go with, a 3 out of 10 for the score of the Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers producer's cut. And that will conclude our revisit of Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, the producer's cut. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Let me know if I missed any of the differences between the two movies. And please be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and keep an eye out for my next video coming soon.